So then, yeah, I guess moving on, if we're gonna talk about UHF as like this, like the good guy wins in the end, and everything, you can follow your dreams and everything's gonna work out, and it's gonna be really funny. I guess almost the antithesis of that is the movie I recommended Gavin, American movie by Chris Smith, which follows Mark Borchardt, who's an aspiring filmmaker from Wisconsin, and his misadventures trying to get his first feature film made, but then having to go back and make a abandoned short film to secure the funds to make the feature. So, what did you think of American movie?
It's just, for the first, 10 minutes, because I didn't do any research on this. I just went in absolutely cold. I was just like, you told me that it was like a documentary, a comedic documentary, and I was like, oh, he means mockumentary. And so then I'm like, I go into it, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is gonna be funny. And then 10 minutes in, I'm like, wait, is this fake? And I'm looking this up because I'm like, there's no way this can be real. Like, some of the stuff that's happening, it's like, this can't be real. I mean, and then I looked it up. I'm like, you're kidding. So I'm like, all right, I'm gonna start over, go back to the beginning, because I'm like, all right, now I have to go in with the mindset of like, okay, this is an actual thing that happened. It's so absurd at some points that I'm like, I mean, these guys, I'm not one to judge on looks, but the first, the shot of Mark, it's like, okay, that's a character. I mean, that looks straight out of like a Napoleon Dynamite type character. I mean, just he's sitting in an RV and he just has the long mullet mustache and those big glasses. I'm like, all right, no, come on, this isn't a real person. But sure enough, it is. And I mean, Mike doesn't seem like a human. He doesn't seem like an actual human character. I'm like, that's gotta be an act. But you go on, and I'm like, it's not an act. This guy is genuinely like this. I mean, just casually talking about how he almost died because of a drug overdose. And he's just like, I have more fun stories to tell you if you'd like. I'm like, what is wrong with these people? It's absurd. It's wonderful. I mean, it's hysterical, but at some point it's just like, hey, this is depressing when you think about what these people are going through. It's like, we're laughing at it, but it's like, this is I don't understand. I mean, just I felt like when Mark was just at the end of the shooting of Coven, he's just sitting in his car, all depressed, winding up the footage. He's like, this is the last shot. I'm by myself. No one's here. I'm like, that's, I mean, hysterical in the context of just framing it, but it's like, that's depressing, man.
Yeah, that's why I love it so much, is that sort of tone where everything's working against you, nothing's going right, but you just have this dream that you're so passionate about, and you have to march onward and make that movie so you can make your $13.95 rental sale to fund your next project.
And I was like, there were so many things in this that, as a film student, gave me PTSD to working on student films. I'm like, it was not okay. I'm like, I graduated from college, I'm done with this. And you're like, here's this movie that's gonna bring back all these bad memories. He comes in, he's like, hey, mom might need to film this. All my extras just dropped out the day before. And that literally happened to me freshman year, the night before a film that I was working on alone. All three of my actors dropped out the night before. I'm like, I don't want to remember this stuff. I don't need to remember this. And he's like, it's 11 a.m. We have 52 shots to go, and we're gonna do it. I'm like, and on a film student set, you're like, we have 52 shots to do by 6 p.m. And by 6 p.m. you're like, we got 10 done, good enough.
Yeah, exactly. It definitely even though it's such a product of its time, and there's this whole thing of oh, we're shooting this on film, and here's all the difficulties of working with this old clunky camera, and then him going into the editing room, and it's literally the hand crank reel and all that. Everything is like you said, everything is super relatable to the modern day struggles. When you get to the core of it, it is, we're all kind of this sort of angsty Mark Borchardt-esque character that's oh, I have a vision and no one understands, man.
I feel him. I mean, I'm in the same boat, kinda. I can relate in a sense to a certain extent, but I just like his frustration when he's like in the kitchen trying to have his mom film like this really simple shot of him just like screaming and then running off frame, and it takes them like 20 minutes of her like, you're not in the frame, you left the frame, you're not, and he's just sitting there going, oh, Mom, am I in the frame yet? Am I just center me in the frame? I was just like, I can relate. I mean, like my parents were very competent with like technology, but it's like as a kid I was always just trying to have them do it, and like if they did something even slightly wrong, I'm like, that's not what you're supposed to do. That's not what I have in mind. You're supposed to do it specifically like this. So I was just like, and I just want to say for the past couple days now, I've just been, any time that I'm like working and my mind just kind of goes blank, I just hear in the back of my head, it's all right. It's okay. There's something to live for. Jesus told me so. But of course with the, it's all right. It's okay. I'm like, oh God, just get the last words out. Oh, that was like the most painful scene for me. It was like, and they're like, they do like a hard cut. They're like, they're like, take 32. I'm like, oh my God, they've been sitting there for 32 takes of him just, I want them to release an uncut version of that exchange. And by the end, Bill's just like, that's all you're getting from me. I'm done. And Mark's like, all right, well, go see what we got. And we got anything usable. And I'm like, spoiler alert, you got nothing. And I love at the very end when they show some of the actual finished film, and it's like, some of the ADR works well, and that line ADR just didn't work at all. Like, his mouth is so far off from his just, it's all right, it's okay. I'm like, this is, and I was like really Oh, it was like a bad lip reading. I was really unsure if by the end of this film what the outcome was going to be, whether we were going to have a happy outcome, like this is the movie did well, or if it was going to be one of those things that here's the premiere and it shows the movie and it's like so laughably terrible,
right.
And the audience is like laughing at it even though it's not supposed to be funny, and it's just like this. I was like, I couldn't tell where this ending was about to go. Like, is this going to be an actual success, or is it just going to be the biggest, most hysterical failure, like a train wreck you can't look away from?
Right. And I'm glad that because it would be, I love that like the whole title American, like it really does reinforce like that idea of like, because Mark mentions it a lot, where like this is America, I have this dream and I'm gonna go out and do it and I can make something of myself, and it's like and like you said, you're so worried the entire time of like he's gonna go out and like he's gonna put all this work in, and then like 8 people are gonna show up in the theater and they're gonna be laughing at it, and the crew's gonna want to like distance themselves, but like I do enjoy that it was like somewhat successful, even though you could argue that he kind of squandered the success of what he got.
I was like people seem to be happy with the result. I mean, like, there were so many people lining up. I was like, first of all, I was surprised that many people showed up. I was expecting they were gonna be like, big premiere, and like 2 people showed up and it was gonna be a disaster. But there's a huge line of people, and then after the film they were cheering and clapping and listening to his speech, and I'm like, is this a happy ending? Are we getting a happy ending in this film? This is crazy.
Right.
And did he sell 3,000 units? I don't think they ever mentioned.
I think that like, they made their money, and unfortunately when Uncle Bill passed, he left Mark some money, but
I saw that.
That's
50,000.
Yeah. To this day, unfortunately, Northwestern has still never been made, despite Mark still working in film today. So
I'd love for like 20 years down the line, that film gets made, like gets finished, and it's like so jarring that like the character walks into a store, and it's like young Mark walking into a store, and then it goes to a close up, and he's like 40 years older, and it's like, and just don't address it. No one address it. Just make it so it's like, oh, like count the continuity errors in like the gaps of filming. That'd be fantastic. I think you just gotta reframe the movie with that idea in mind of just, this movie was shot over the course of like 50 years.
Exactly, yeah. But it's just it is fantastic. It's it is like, even though it does have like this big kind of like kind of I don't know, like sadness to it, I guess, where it's like, oh man, this guy is not like nothing's going right for him. Like even
Exactly.
though, yeah, like it is kind of heartwarming in that like he just will not give up. And
See, yeah,
I love that.
There's a completely different mindset when you watch it. I mean, like, even that first 10 minutes when I watched it thinking it was fake and then rewatching it knowing it's real, like, you have a completely different perception on how the film is viewed. Like, him opening up the film saying, like, I'm a failure. I'm like, that's funny. Like, that's a funny way. But then when you reframe it as watching it as real, it's like, oh, that's kind of sad. He's like, I'm a failure. I can't do anything, but I'm gonna keep trying. It's like, it's funny at first, but then when you think of it as a real person, trying to make what they want, it's like, oh, that's kind of depressing.
Right. But it like, again, I like that it is kind of, it's not sad in the way of like he's gonna fail. Like there's like that desperate sort of hope of like, oh, you can do it, we believe in you, and then it like doesn't maybe work out quite the way that he wanted, but like it's still qualifiable as success. And
it is still qualifiable as a film.
The bare minimum. Yeah, no, that's one of my favorite lines too, is when he oh shoot, okay, I have it right here. When he's there's no excuses. No one has ever paid admission to see an excuse. No one's ever faced a black screen that says, well, if we had these set of circumstances, we would have shot the scene. So please forgive us and use your imagination. I've been to the movies hundreds of times. That's never occurred. So
that seems like script writing. That seems like something you would read right out of a comedic script. Sometimes I'm like, I just can't believe these are real people.
Exactly.
And this is their real lives. I'm like, I've been to the movie theater hundreds of times. That's never happened. Like, why do you feel the need to like specify that? Like, I'm pretty sure we all understand what you're saying, but you have to specify. I've been there, never seen that happen.
Exactly.
I'm like, this is so absurd. I was like, this can't be real.
And it's so quotable too. Like there's so many lines that like I'm sorry, try to put your head through there, man. Like Mark alone, like you could fill an entire book like just listing like every quotable thing he has in this movie. It's so good.
I'm trying to think what was he had a word for Mike that he was smashing a car, and he was like, Mike was smashing the car, and Mark said, oh, is that cathartic to you, Mike? Yeah. Do you know what cathartic means? No. I'm like, oh my god. I'm like, what are these people doing? And he's like, it means you're getting a lot of anger. And he's like, then yes, it was cathartic. I'm like, why would you just say yes? Like,
Mike is just, oh man, like Mike is the unsung, and I love that like all of the music in the movie is him too. Like every piece of music is something like Mike just kind of threw together. Like it's so, man, it's too good.
Yeah, he is.
And then when they're doing like the ADR and like because the whole movie he's like just like he's like so quiet, and then he just like lets out this demonic scream. Yeah,
that was insane. I was like, that was again one of those things that I'm like, this can't be reality. Like this is like that is character writing. That's like this person that is so quiet, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, here's their big breakout moment. But it's like, no, this is real life. He's just crazy. And then immediately after the screen, they're like, good. He's like, thanks.
Thanks, man.
I'm like, and he's back to normal. And we got Mike back again. There he is.
You couldn't even try to write something as unique as this.
At that point, there's so much. It's just like, usually it's like writing. You can't write this stuff. It's like you literally cannot write this stuff just because it's so out there that you would write it, and they'd say, but no one would actually say that in this scenario. So let's take that line out because no one would actually say that. And Mark's like, hold my beer, I'll say that.
Yeah, exactly. There's nobody who would. I'm trying to find. I was looking at the IMDb like of all the well-known lines or whatever. You can't write. You guys got to look more menacing. Can you be more menacing with like the people who are just in black hoods off in a field?
Oh my god! It's just and it's like they're all in the field like in snow and they're setting up a shot, and then Mike comes in and he's like, "Can you put my soda on the tarp so it doesn't get frozen? I would like to drink it afterwards." I'm like, "Is that really your main concern right now?"
Or like in that same scene where he's like, "Hey Mike, can you go around and make sure everyone has their gloves?" And Mike just turns on.
Do you guys
have your gloves?
I'm like, and this again, one of those moments where I'm like, I have to pause it and go, but it's real, right? I'm like,
It is.
I had to look up a couple times to just verify I wasn't reading someone's opinion on it. Like, I'm like, this is a documentary, not a mockumentary, right? And like, everything is like, yeah, that's, I'm like, obviously, I mean, I was watching a little while ago, there was a documentary on SNL, and like on the process of that, and Lorne Michaels says, like, obviously, he's like, what you're seeing in this, what your cameras are getting is a little bit different than what happens around here every week, because when those cameras come out, you become a bit of a character. You kind of put on a bit of an act. So I'm like, I'm curious how much different these people are in real life. I have a feeling, not very much, but it's like some of it, I'm like, they had to be playing that up for the kid. Please tell me they were just playing that up. Please tell me that wasn't actually crossing their mind.
Yeah, no, I think that like there's definitely that kind of does exist for most people, where like I'm gonna sort of accentuate my personality to like because I know I'm being recorded and all that. And I think that Mark definitely has that. I think he's probably much more quiet and like maybe a bit more like high on himself if he's not being recorded. But I think Mike genuinely is that just sort of quiet, unassuming guy. Yeah. But no, it's just such a great movie, and
it's fantastic.
And it is very like I keep on saying it's very sort of. There's definitely moments where you're like, oh, that's a little. Maybe a little bit too real, maybe a little too depressing, but the thing I love about it is that like anytime I watch it, I'm like, oh man, I gotta get back to work. I gotta make something, because like, I'm so inspired by this random guy from Milwaukee who's gonna go out and change the world with his little short horror movie. But which, speaking of which, because I think you mentioned earlier, if you do want to see the full thing, you can find Coven on YouTube. It's about like 40 minutes long, and it's not. I think it's worth it as a good like little supplemental experience to the movie. But it's I think Northwestern is what we all eventually would like to see someday.
But the real question, you said Coven is good as supplemental material for the movie. Do you think it stands on its own?
No. No. I think if you just found it and watched it on its own, you'd be like, "Oh, that's a okay, that was weird." Yeah, but
that was 40 minutes.
that was 40 minutes of my life gone by. But like with knowing like when you watch Coven and then you see like that shot of like him screaming and he's like kind of out of frame, you're like, oh yeah, that's because his mom was behind the camera.
Exactly.
Right there.
You can kind of there are things to look out for.
Right. And yeah, it's just American Movie and Coven, they're both like, if you do like a little double feature, it's really fun. Yeah. But at the very least, people should check out American Movie, because it's just man, it's inspiring, it's funny. It gives you a nice shot of reality, but at the same time, I think it inspires the dreamer and a lot of people like you and I who go out and make creative stuff like this for a living. So, if you want to watch American Movie and you haven't yet, you can watch it on iTunes for $4. I don't usually when you Google a movie, it'll tell you like all the different platforms, but it's only telling me iTunes. How did you watch it?
I looked around. There wasn't, for some reason. I mean, like if you go on like Amazon, it's like it's not available in your country. I'm like, really? I mean, on most places where it's like linked, like they at least have a page for it, it says it's not available in the U.S. So I was able to actually find a link to it. On Reddit, on the documentaries subreddit, there was a discussion about it, and there was a link to the movie. I don't even know what site it was, but I was like, there it was, and I was like, wonderful. There it is. I mean, probably not the most legal link ever, but I'll take it.
So then, Mark, if you're listening to this, please make your movie available for the
yes, Mark.
public.
I will watch it again. I just need a place to watch it.
I know that he's active on YouTube, but he hasn't uploaded in, I think, years. I think it's a lot of his kids are like helping him upload stuff. Cause...
Hey, Mark, let's do it. Let's do a collab, Mark. Come on, come to my channel. You want to get featured on a cover? I'll do the score for your next movie.
There, that'd be amazing. I think
only on Automatone for Northwestern.
The Northwestern was like a movie made in like the early '90s, has this like very modern score. Like that'd be so good.
Genius. It's genius.
Well, I mean, you might be able to shoot your shot because according to the Wikipedia, it's still in production since the year 2000. So,
God bless him.
That window is still open for you. But
oh God.